Well, welcome back again this week. As I mentioned recently, there's a lot more evidence of the fact that a lot of what is being proposed today in the way of what they call free trade, which is actually a union. It's either a Pacific Union or an Atlantic Union, but in this case, they call it the Trans-Pacific Partnership. And that's really merger, that's union, that's what partnerships are all about. Now, this is one understanding the Trans-Pacific Partnership. It's put out by the Peterson Institute for International Economics. It's a very prestigious organization with strong ties to the Council on Foreign Relations, you know, the New World Order people. And in here, they reconfirm the idea that the TPP, the Trans-Pacific Partnership, and ALEC and the free trade area of the Asia-Pacific are all interwoven, all working together, and they're going to take them step by step until they get complete economic integration of China and the United States through this instrument, the TPP. So this is straight from a horse's mouth, if you wish. You see, a lot of people, they read their newspapers, it's not there particularly, sometimes it is, but most of the time it isn't. You have to go to the people that are actually negotiating these things to find out what they really have in mind. And what they really have in mind is the abrogation of the United States, the Constitution, our independence, our sovereignty, and they're calling it something else. You see, these people are smart. They always get us using terms that if we use those terms, we've already lost the fight. We are calling it free trade. It's not free trade. You see, but they've gotten us calling it free trade. There's a little bit of free trade in there. It's sort of like salt and pepper in a stew. Would you like a plate of salt and pepper? Well, why would I want a plate of salt and pepper? Oh, you mean it's stew. Oh yeah, I'll eat the stew. But you see, maybe you don't like the stew. Maybe it's not your brand of stew. The salt and pepper might be better than the stew itself. And so, sure, you'll take a plate of salt and pepper to kind of put into other things, but you can keep the stew. Now, that's a very bad analogy, I suppose, but that's really what the free trade issues are. They're giving us a stew, and that stew is blending all of the ingredients of our economies together into one big hodgepodge, and they're calling it trade. It's not trade, it's economic integration, which always leads to political integration, always. One thing too, I just visited the Hill this last week, talking to a number of people, giving out certificates where men had voted 100% on the Freedom Index over the last 6 months. One of the things that we saw in the one of the house buildings was a display, and we picked up some literature from that display, and it is promoting regime change in Iran. Now ask yourself, put it in your mind any organization that you may belong to, PTA, I don't care what it is, the NRA, whatever, and ask yourself, would this organization be allowed to set up a display in the office buildings of the House of Representatives? And so when they do allow an organization to do that, particularly with a rather controversial thing, with something that affects the future of another country, regime change in Iran, isn't that pretty substantial? And yet they did that. Like I said, I picked up some literature from it, promoting regime change in Iran. It doesn't matter what the reason for it is. They have allowed these people to come in to promote this within the halls of Congress. It gives you an idea of what's down the road in the future. Another thing that I noticed in our paper last week, United States to help resettle more Syrian refugees. Now, they brought in 150 refugee families into our little town here. We can't find out where they're coming from. Nobody will say, and they're getting ready for another batch. But in here, they say that that these folks will be pretty much put into Illinois, California, and Texas, according to the State Department. Of course, you can always believe the State Department. At any rate, now we see Syrian refugees. We've had Iranian refugees, Iraqi refugees, Afghani refugees, the Hmong, Somalis, on and on and on. Every time we stick our nose into some area and stir it up and create a war in those areas, that gives us the excuse to bring more people into the United States. Now, a lot of people keep their eye on the southern border, and all the figures that they have for illegal immigrants come from those areas. But they never talk about the hundreds, maybe even millions of people that they've flown in from these other countries and resettled them in the United States. The only requirement that they ask of these refugees in order to be here is that they get involved in community action groups. In its day, like Acorn. And for 7 years, they're totally subsidized. They get a car, they get rent, they get food stamps, the whole bit, and all they have to do is go get actively involved in very social-minded, socialist community action organizations. And then ultimately they become citizens and vote accordingly. They've turned whole towns around in some areas of our country by bringing these refugees in. It isn't just simply the Hispanics from south of the border. It involves people that have got some very unsavory history. As I've said with a lot of these refugees, another word for refugee is loser. Now that may seem a little callous, but in many of these cases we're bringing in people that lost their particular civil war or their turf war even. In the case of Somalia, it's a matter of warlords. Whoever lost their refugees come to the United States. Doesn't make them good people. It just means that they lost. And they are in danger of being killed by the either not so bad people or even worse people. Who knows? But that's the sort of thing that is going on, and now they're advertising it again. We're going to get Syrian refugees. Another thing that I noticed in the newspaper this last week was the post-ObamaCare strategy in the Wall Street Journal. In fact, this is today's paper, December 15th, 2014. This is an editorial, a post-ObamaCare strategy. The final paragraph in this reads this way: But even if the justices, meaning the Supreme Court, uphold the subsidies for Obamacare, the GOP will be that much further along towards crafting a replacement. Now, you wonder why the leadership of the Republican Party doesn't really aggressively try to repeal Obamacare. For instance, defund it in this budget bill they just passed. Why is it they don't really stop illegal immigration? It's because the leaders of the Republican Party in Congress are for illegal immigration, and they are for Obamacare. Now, they may not quite put it that way, but they do want the borders to be eliminated because they do support these North American Union type of initiatives with no border, with free flow of labor, etc., across the Canada, United States, and Mexico. So why would they be against illegal immigration if that's their long-range plan? And the same way with Obamacare. Why would they be against a government healthcare system if they're trying to merge the healthcare systems of Canada, the United States, and Mexico? You can't merge free enterprise with socialism. And so in order to merge our healthcare with Canada, it has to be a socialist-style healthcare system. So those are the things behind the scenes that are going on that lead to the long-range decision of these Republicans and why their short-term decisions seem to be ineffective. They're not ineffective, they just don't correspond with what they want to do in the long run, such as healthcare and immigration. Lastly, the thing that kind of struck me is that in USA Today this last week, The United States Air Force, the head of it, has come out and said they're going to reconsider having transgender individuals in the United States Air Force. Now, in marketing, they say sex sells. So, frankly, I don't know what this new decision or this revision of their decision is going to do for their recruiting. I really have a hesitancy to comment too much further on the thing, except my idea of an armed force is to go out and beat the other guy before he beats you. I'm not sure that transgenders are capable of doing that, but be that as it may, we kind of live in an upside-down world, don't we? Until next week, we'll see you then.